Hi, Jack Canfield here again with another segment of Talking About Success. My next guest, one of the most interesting people I've ever had sitting on this couch. I'm really excited to have you here. Dr. Gilo Kwesi Logan. He speaks all over the world telling his incredible story, which you're going to hear about in just a moment. He's a diversity and inclusion strategist, a consultant, a speaker, a world-class explorer, which is part of the story that I just love, with over 20 years experience developing global leadership and diverse talent. To have this life, you should be much older than you are. You've seen and done so much. I love it. So you've worked and lived in 23 countries.
Yes.
And how did you translate? You were a local kid living in Evanston, Illinois.
That's right.
And all of a sudden, now you're this world traveler. Tell us the story. How did you go from there to here?
Well, that's a good question. I fondly remember as a child sitting with my brother and my sister at the feet of my elders, and we used to hear the stories about our ancestors who founded successful businesses, were pioneers and community servants. Mm-hmm. And you know, I loved hearing the stories of our ancestors and relatives who escaped the slavery on the Underground Railroad, who went on to found successful businesses. They had ancestors who worked with Jane Addams at Hull House,
oh, wow.
Served in World War II, the Korean conflict, mm-hmm. and participated in the March on Washington. So when I was 2 years old, only 2, I remember the scream of my mother upon her learning of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Mm. And little did I know at the time, that was my introduction not only into the world, but into the world of diversity and inclusion and social justice. So fast forward 20 years, when I was on my last semester of my last day of class, I got on my 27-page essay that I wrote on apartheid, my professor wrote in red ink, "Please see me." So I packed my bags, I marched down to his office, knocked on the door, he let me in, and I'm looking on his wall of all the accolades and trophies and awards and certificates, and really it reflected the life that I wanted to live. And as I sat there, he asked me, he said, "So, Mr. Logan, who wrote that essay?" And I'm like, "Wait, excuse me? Are you talking to me?" And he's like, "Really, who wrote that essay?" So essentially, he was accusing me of not working hard enough, not being smart enough, or not being on enough to produce the work that I did. Mm-hmm. And I was stunned. I mean, I was hurt, I was angry, I was frustrated. And as I contemplated what to do and how to kind of release my frustration upon him, if you will, I fell back on the stories that my father told me when he served as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s bodyguard. And Dr. King told him, he said that you have to stay the course. You can be anything in life that you want to be, but you have to earn your education. That's going to be the key to your future. So in that moment, I remembered those words, and I remembered the words of Dr. King when he says that we need to be nonviolent in our approach. And that really resonated with me. So as I, again, contemplated how to release a judicious rage upon this man, but you know, I realized I would have been falling into the stereotype of the angry black man. I would have been the one on the front page of the newspaper looking like, you know, right. The one going after him. And at that point, I realized that it was incumbent upon me to act better than that and not fall into the trap. So basically, I packed my bags, I stood up, I walked over to him, I looked him in the eye, and I shook his hand. I said, "Thank you very much." And as I turned around, the buckets came from under my eyes to catch all the tears. I refused to allow this man to see me cry. Mm-hmm. And as I walked out into the hallway and went to my apartment, I was embarrassed and ashamed because not only had my whole family come down to see me graduate, but graduation was the very next day, and I wasn't going to be graduating. So my parents convinced me to go through the graduation ceremony for their behalf, which I did. But as a result of that, I was very frustrated, and I just felt like I reached a dead end. And I remembered the words of Nelson Mandela when he says that there's no easy walk to freedom. So I went on to eventually take a few additional courses, graduate in business marketing. But I had this degree, and I felt like I would have had a fat wallet but an empty heart and soul. So as I explored myself, I realized I was dissatisfied, I was discontent, I was confused as to who I was and what I wanted to do. So although I had my degree, I had questions about life and about corporate America that I had to reconcile within myself. So what I did is, with three very good friends of mine from high school, I packed my backpack and I went on what I thought was going to be a 2-week vacation around the world. And it ended up being a 16-month soul-searching journey through the Fiji Islands, New Zealand, Australia, Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. And that journey was transformative. 14 months of that experience, I traveled alone by myself. And not only was it transformative, it's what I call liberatory transformation. So the transformation helped to liberate me from the confines of who I saw myself to be. And as a result, now imagine a little black boy who had never been west of the Mississippi River, going to Fiji, where I'm seeing black people who I didn't know existed in that part of the world. Then I go to New Zealand, where I experienced the Black Power movement, where they were influenced by the movement here. Then I go to one particular area in Indonesia, and I'm perceived to be the black devil because I'm experiencing people who had never seen black people before. Then I go into India, and I meet a black man who many people consider to be God or a Swami or an avatar, named Sai Baba.
Oh, yeah.
So I had a couple of occasions of meeting him, and that experience totally transformed my life, and that helped me to develop a global mindset, a global identity, a global consciousness, and to what I have come to see to be developing global leadership skills that led me into the consulting work that I do today.
Well, I was going to ask you that. So here you are, you've traveled around the world. How old were you when you got back?
I left when I was 22, and I came back when I was about 24.
And now here you are, you're this internationally global consultant, speaker, trainer, author, whatever. Tell us a little more about the transition that got you from there to sitting here.
Yeah, well, so I was born and raised in Evanston, a suburb of Chicago. Beautiful place, right on the lakefront, green city. Yeah, it's a tree city, so lots of greenery, lots of parks. Northwestern University is there, Rotary International, some of the best schools in the country. But yet, when you take the veil off of Evanston, I realized that just like many areas in our country, there's extreme disparity in terms of race and class. So Evanston is a very diverse place, but it's not to confuse diversity with integration. So it's very segregated. We have too many black and brown youth who are being killed on the streets of Evanston. We have the average black and brown youth in Evanston is performing below standards academically, although we have one of the best school districts in the city.
Right.
So seeing that disparity, many people in our community call this superficial diversity drive-by diversity. So when my son, Olu, my youngest son, was in elementary school in 2nd grade, he was in math class and he asked one of his friends if you want to play a game, and his friend was like, no. And Olu's like, well, why not? He said, because black kids aren't supposed to play together with white kids. So my son went to the teacher, talked to him. He really didn't respond. He just told him, okay, just have a seat and go back to the game. Our son came home and told us the story, and his sadness became our sadness. His hurt was our hurt. Later on that year, our eldest son, Ulai, was on the playground playing soccer, and he was called the N-word by a kid. So I took these incidences, brought them to the principal's attention, and she acknowledged that there were other issues similar at the school, in addition to issues with, serving students who are English language learners, students who are from low-income families, and et cetera. But she also acknowledged the fact that something needed to be done, and she wasn't quite sure what to do. And she agreed with me that the change needed to happen at the institutional level, not just a teacher's training or a workshop for the parents. So she asked me if I can offer some perspective and offer of my expertise. So I was, and currently am, a professor, adjunct professor in Justice Studies Department at a university in Chicago. So I pulled from the experiences that I had at the university. I worked with the principal, the PTA, the Parent Advisory Committee, and we developed a diversity and inclusion program for the parents, for teachers, and administrators. And it was very successful. This was a 3-year process in which I was working with them. We had hundreds of parents to come out, teachers, administrators, and we dealt with issues of how to talk to children about race and racism, how to develop intercultural competencies within our children and our parents, how to have conversations on commonalities between the different cultures, and how to develop a positive identity in children. So from the success of this, it then, articles were written. Now the school district was calling me in to do additional work district-wide. And from there, other schools in the Chicagoland area learned of the work. The local police department then ended up hiring me. Other corporations ended up finding out about the work that I was doing. And because of the success of this, my wife and I decided that, now is the time. I've had all this travel, I've earned all these degrees, have all this experience, and now is a great opportunity to not only serve my community and represent our family and parents, but to serve our country and to bring all those experiences I had traveling back into the community. So as a result, we took all of our savings, we took our retirement money, put it all together and started Logan Consulting Services, and that's how I began my consulting work.
Very good. So when you go into let's say a corporation, you're going to work with them on diversity and inclusion.
Yes.
What do you do with them?
My mission is, I work with leaders and organizations, teams and individuals to help them meet the challenges and the opportunities of living in a global society. Mm-hmm. So my emphasis is in developing global leadership. So essentially 3 things: developing global leaders, leveraging diverse talent, and helping them to gain a competitive advantage. So with that, so for example, developing global leaders need to develop a global mindset in order to understand the ideologies and the dimensions of globalization that impact leadership, impact different corporations. We also work with corporations to help them develop what I call the global leadership development pipeline, because I find that most corporations in America are lacking global leaders. So there's a process in which they can cultivate their own leaders. In terms of leveraging diverse talent, helping groups, helping teams, helping different units leverage the diversity towards the advantage, towards creative problem solving. And in terms of competitive advantage, it really helps corporations save the cost of absenteeism, of turnover, of frustrated employees. It helps to minimize the cost of potential lawsuits. And we also really help to recruit and retain and promote and develop the best in global and diverse leadership and diverse talent.
Mm-hmm. Are any common misbeliefs or about diversity that people have that you could clean up?
Yeah, there's a lot. It's almost like diversity in a way. It's almost become like a dirty word. It's almost like a bad word. So for example, a lot of people assume that diversity is about race and racism. That's just one element of a plethora of different elements of diversity. So there's race and class and gender and sexual orientation. There's diversity of values and beliefs and attitudes. There's diverse teams and units within a department. So that's one of the misconceptions, particularly as an African American coming in to work with different corporations. The perception is, oh God, we're here to talk about race and racism. And that's just one element of many. Another one is many people assume that diversity means difference. And when you really look at the root word of diversity, the Latin word is diversus, which means variety. And the difference is, so instead of different people or different types of books or different fruit, that's how you categorize them and separate them, as opposed to looking at the commonality. So variety of people, a variety of types of books, a variety of types of fruits. So it highlights the similarity. In addition to that, many people have had negative experiences with diversity. So whether it's personally, in terms of their relationship with power, privilege, and oppression, in terms of how they've experienced that individually or within the institutions in which they work. Many people have had negative experiences, or they go to a training and they're being told everything that's bad, or the training happens after the problem occurs, or you bring in a consultant and consultants are bringing in fluff. not really dealing with what I call the criticality of diversity, really looking at it critically but constructively in terms of resolution. And lastly, I would say that people assume that diversity is difficult. Diversity is not difficult. People are. Because look at nature. I mean, nature is a perfect example of the beauty of diversity. So diversity is not difficult. We are the difficulty that we bring to diversity. So if we as individuals, if we as leaders, if we within our organizations focused on what's happening internally, that's where real change lies, and that's in the change of identity.
Beautiful. I love that. Now you're writing a book.
Yes.
Talk about the book.
Yes. The book is called Beyond the Dream, Building Resilience, Facing Adversity, and Creating the Life That You Want to Live. So really, it's a culmination of my life experiences traveling. You know, I've survived a plane crash landing in Guinea, West Africa. I've had 8 bouts with malaria, 1 in Ghana, 1 in Indonesia, which were near fatal.
You only have 9 lives, so you got to be careful.
Yeah, so I'm at the last count, right? I rescued myself from being lost in the forest in the South Island of New Zealand, wild boar hunting.
Wow.
I was an illegal migrant worker in Australia. So I've hiked hundreds of miles in the mountains and volcanoes and across rainforests and deserts. And so the book is really how people can develop resilience and how they can develop the tips, tools, and techniques for facing adversity and how they can create the life that they want to live. So I'm pulling from my lived experiences and trying to provide people the inspiration, but also some practical tips and tools as to how they can create the life that they want to live. Because I found that it works for me. I found many of these tips and tools and this wisdom from indigenous people around the world. You know, when I traveled, I gained what I call it rekindled my faith in humanity. I experienced so many beautiful, wonderful people of all different races, different cultures, different religions and ethnicities who took me in, who didn't know me, who accepted me, who taught me, who nurtured me, who loved me, who challenged me, who helped me reconstruct a new identity of who I am as a man, as an American, and as an African American man. So the book is speaking of these experiences, and these indigenous people really helped me to become what I call a born-again human being. And that really helped to rekindle my faith in humanity. So what that experience did for me was the indigenous people of the world and their wisdom taught me, and part of what I do in my consultancy is bring that to the Western world. And I try to also bring the best of the Western world to the indigenous people of the world. And I feel that I know that diversity and inclusion, it's the present, but it's also the future for us individually and for corporations and for parents. You know, I'm a former elementary school teacher. I've taught middle school and high school. And when I say developing global leaders, I think it's extremely important to underscore the fact, at least from my perspective, I'm also talking about teachers and parents, because teachers and parents are developing and cultivating literally our future, our children. I think about principals and superintendents because they are developing global leadership. I'm looking at our children as leaders and how can we prepare them for the 21st century. So the book is for teachers, it's for parents, it's for African Americans, it's for Americans, it's for people in the Western world. It's for everyone because it's a message for humanity, it's a human story, and it's really about helping people build resilience, facing adversity, and creating the life that they want to live.
Well, you're one very wise person, Gilo. And
I'm still learning.
Well, we all are, and that's part of the wisdom, is to keep open and keep learning. You know, one of my mentors also lived in Evanston, Illinois, a man named W. Clement Stone.
Oh.
And I worked for his foundation in Chicago for a number of years, and one of the things he said there are 2 things you have to leverage if you want to be successful, OPM and OPE. And what he meant by that was other people's money, so you get investors.
Okay.
And OPE, other people's experiences. In other words, everyone doesn't have to go to Guinea to have the experience that you had because they can learn from your experience. we can learn from the generations before us that have left clues about living life. And I know that you have amassed an amazing amount of clues about what makes a life work. I was just listening to you, and this trio of words came into my head: university, which means one universe, diversity, and how to face adversity. And you have all this you can share with people. So you're one of the most brilliant people that's ever sat in this couch.
I appreciate hearing that come from you.
Well, I appreciate having the experience of meeting you.
And you know, that journey, I call it the inward journey. Just to your point, I call it the inward journey, because really, although I traveled to those countries and had those different experiences, it was really about the journey within.
Yes.
And how it brought me to face my own baggage.
Yes.
And my own issues. And therefore, if someone I met people who never left their village.
Right.
And they had some of the same knowledge and understanding
Exactly.
that I acquired. And when I thought, how can I encapsulate my 8 years of living in 23 different countries in one word? It was really about soul. But when I asked myself, okay, that's cute. Now, what does soul mean to me? I thought of the acronym SPIRIT of universal love, because it's really about spirit, it's about energy, it's about who we are as human beings. It's something that's universal. No one culture, no one religion, no one country has exclusive rights to it, and it's based on love. And that encapsulates that experience, and that's also in the book.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Someone said recently, you know, we've got all this money going to NASA and exploring outer space, and people now talking about colonizing Mars because Earth may become a place you don't want to live. And someone recently said, no, when we conquer inner space, that will be when we transform the planet, not outer space. So,
that's right.
Great. Well, this is great. Your book, again, Beyond the Dream.
Beyond the Dream.
Tell people how to reach you. Your website is?
They can reach me at loganconsultingservices.com.
loganconsultingservices.com. Clear and simple. It's been a wonderful. I wish we had all day. I'd like to turn this into a master class.
That sounds good. That sounds good. I think
maybe we'll do that someday.
Sounds good. Thank you,
Thank you for joining me today,
Thank you.
Logan.
I appreciate it.
Okay, check out his book. Check out his website. This is a man worth listening to and learning from. Stick around. We'll be right back after this message.